foreshadowing him, and he's setting the model. This is how you should do it. And we've done it wrong in the past, but now we finally arrived. And they end right here with this statement, and then the history is done. But, of course, then history keeps going. And then so then the theory would be that you have a few decades pass, and then you get like a Moroni figure who finishes some additional narrative and maybe goes back and adds some stuff earlier. And one of the things that happens, if that's how it happened, after the first edition of this, is that Josiah's reign comes to an unexpectedly horrific end. So in verse 29, it talks about the Pharaoh, king of Egypt, is coming up and he's traveling through Josiah's territory to go up to Assyria. And Josiah rides out there to stop him from going through Judah, and it says that the Pharaoh slew him at Megiddo when he had seen him. And the servants carried Josiah in a chariot dead from Megiddo and brought him to Jerusalem and buried him. And after all the build-up, all the prophecies, all the chapters on Josiah, that's kind of like, whoa, that took a turn. And it's interesting, there's no explanation here to why did God let Josiah die. After all that, he did nothing wrong. And so possibly, if this is written not that long after Josiah's reign, somebody feels like they need to update the story and finish it, but they still have not had time to process this and figure it out. So they don't even bother to try to explain this. It's just a tragedy. They describe it matter-of-factly, and then they move on because they don't know what to do with this. Interestingly enough, Chronicles, since it's written much later, it's had more time to think about this. It actually adds an explanation. It suggests that maybe the Pharaoh going up through the country, that God wanted Pharaoh to go where he was going, and Josiah made the mistake of interfering with God's plans, and that's where he went wrong. Made a mistake there. But so that's Chronicles trying to figure it out later. But the King's version here, the earlier one, is just like, yeah, moving on.
We don't know how to do it.
They were not particularly allies at this point with Egypt or anything?
The problem seems to be that Josiah tried to stop the Pharaoh, and that's where he got in trouble. There's a bigger political picture going on, but it's not important for the narrative, so they don't give us the details.
Josh, I was going to say, it's so interesting that the initial ending could have been 2 Kings 23:25, because that seems like a beautiful ending. Cut, credits, let's move on. It's almost like you said with Moroni, how many times does Moroni finish the Book of Mormon and then says, well, I haven't died, so I guess we're going to have to continue the story.
Yeah, and Moroni at first doesn't think he's going to write that much, so rather than start a new book, he just tacks on stuff and keeps the Book of Mormon going a couple more chapters. If someone came after this and would decide, okay, I'll just add a little bit to the end of 2 Kings here and bring it to my point of time, that's kind of what Moroni did.
So how do they explain the fall of Judah?
After Josiah dies, his son Jehoahaz is made the king. But he doesn't last very long because the Pharaoh comes back and gets rid of that guy and puts his brother Jehoiakim on the throne because he apparently had agreed to work with the Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh thinks he can call the shots now. And then it's the beginning of the end. Because Jehoiakim, he ends up having to be a vassal to the new eastern superpower, which is Babylon at this point. Babylon's conquered the Assyrians, and now they're doing the exact same thing. Pay us taxes or we'll come destroy you.
Babylon once was a vassal of Assyria, rebelled, and took down Assyria.
Now they're doing the same stuff that Assyria had been doing. But then, in verse 24, verse 1, in the days of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, Jehoiakim became his servant 3 years, so that means he's the vassal. And then he turned and rebelled against him. And we know how these things are. So then, Nebuchadnezzar is, upset that he broke the treaty, so he starts marching on Jerusalem, and it appears that as he's coming to invade, Jehoiakim dies, and his son Jehoiachin takes over and becomes the new king. And then Nebuchadnezzar takes that guy and exiles him to Babylon, Jehoiachin. So this is like verse 8 now of 24. In verse 24:11, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came against the city, and his servants did besiege it, but he's not going to completely destroy the city yet. The king that's on the throne now didn't rebel against him. That was his dad. So he's like, well, maybe I can still work with your family here if you promise to behave in the future. So he exiles Jehoiachin to Babylon, and he picks his uncle, Jehoiakim's brother, and makes him the king, and makes him promise that, he'll keep up the vassal status there. So look at verse 24, verse 15. He carried away Jehoiachin to Babylon, and all his family. And then look at verse 17. And the king of Babylon made Mattaniah, his father's brother, king in his stead, and changed his name to Zedekiah. And that should make your Book of Mormon bells ring. Oh, the first year of the reign of Zedekiah, king of Judah, that's when Lehi starts prophesying. So we're right there.
1 Nephi 1, verse 4.
Yep.